Welcome to Godly Conversations. Today Cliffe will be debating on how the miracles in the Bible were true. This video is taken from Give Me an Answer. Let's jump straight into the video.
With regards to Old Testament miracles, I find them scientifically impossible and without evidence.
Okay, great. Great point. You're right. Miracles are impossible if you have the philosophical presupposition of naturalism. If only the material is real, if all of reality is matter and energy, then of course miracles don't take place. But if you allow for the possibility of a supernatural God, then it is totally reasonable that a supernatural God can change a law of nature that he created in the first place and create what you and I call a miracle.
If you were to, say, somehow fit every animal in the world 2 by 2 into a large ark, you would see evidence of migration. You would see changes in the DNA left in the soil. You would see fossilization of perhaps different remains that they left or eaten along the way. We don't see any mass migration like that. Alternatively, if you were to take the idea that the whole world was flooded, right, you would see different layers of animal skeletons residing at different elevations. I think one of the most common examples is they say the Grand Canyon has these striations, right? So as you see the striations, you see that different layers of sediment have been compounded on top of each other. If the case were that there was a flood, you would see the same animal skeleton, same remains, traveling up the side of it, because I assume that animals would try to escape the flood by climbing higher. Or you would see different deposition of different soils at different levels. However, we see that there's just different striations as expected of a world that occurs naturally, especially with sediment.
You must read any document and respect literary style. Paul preached the gospel to the whole world. Does that mean that Paul went to South America, North America, and Asia, and Australia? No, it does not. So the question is, was the flood literally universal, or was it a local flood? When I was in college, I had to read the Gilgamesh epic.
Yes.
The sad thing was that my professor mocked the idea of the flood in Genesis and used the Gilgamesh epic to do that. The mistake my professor made was, it's very possible there was a flood and different cultures struggled through how to communicate the flood. Isn't it fascinating that in a lot of ancient cultures, you do have a flood account? It's not just in Genesis. The Gilgamesh epic communicates crystal clearly that there was quite the flood. So to try and argue that no, there was not some great flood thousands of years ago is a little ridiculous. And then to insist that the Bible says the flood literally went around the whole world. No, there are many followers of Christ, deeply committed to the scriptures, who understand it was a local flood. I don't think that kangaroos hopped from Australia to Iraq to get on the ark. Okay? And so to demand that kind of thing from a text that's not being that specific, I don't think is intellectually honest.
Okay, so with regard to that being a local flood, if that was the case, you would also see the same result in that area. The evidence doesn't change, right? No matter what sort of flood you have, you would still see changes in deposition. Especially with regards to how things occurred in the Old Testament, you would see that people made large claims as to how old Noah was and other things. Calling Apostle Paul as someone you can rely on is not necessarily wrong per se. I don't say that he's not a good person, but I will say that he definitely had a stake in having the Bible be true, right? Because for every Christian, if the Bible is true, it validates their reason for being. Earlier you mentioned something about a culture of death and how atheism is a culture of death. However, if it was true that our lives ended here, wouldn't it be better in our lives to be better in this short time that we have on earth? Your impetus assumes that
all of your talking presupposes that good and better are real. What is good? Who defines good? Who defines better? If you're an atheist, what you have to acknowledge is it is relative, culturally relative, which is why Shirley Jackson in 1948 wrote the short story called The Lottery. It's about a small town.
I'm aware of The Lottery.
The Lottery, okay, and you know that Mrs. Hutchinson is stoned by her children.
Right.
Because she lost the lottery. So if you've read that short story, then you know what Shirley Jackson is trying to get at, which is your stinking cultural relativism is so bankrupt, it's scary.
I don't think that was the point of that story.
Of course, the point of the story is evil is real.
I believe that the story went along the lines of they continue this tradition for no reason. other than because the tradition was there. Because
Yeah,
they were
and
told their
cultural
entire
relativism is the answer, right?
life.
The
That's
reason
not
that
the answer.
that's done is that's what the culture tells you to do. In order for the crops to grow, you have to stone somebody every spring. And so Mrs. Hutchinson gets stoned because that's the belief of that culture. Our crops grow because someone is stoned every spring. That's what you've got to get to eventually if you're an atheist. Because there is no mind prior to the human mind who defines right and wrong, which means it's all relative. That's a culture of death, sir, flat out.
No, because we can assume that there are certain ways you can view society, right, that are better and good. For example, taking
Not better and good, they just are.
No.
You can't say they're better and good, otherwise you're a cultural imperialist. You're an arrogant cultural imperialist if you say, my culture is better than your culture.
I would never say culture, I would say social science.
Fine.
So, for
If your
example-
social science is better than my social science, that is cultural imperialism.
No,
Cultural
we can-
arrogance.
We can quantify it, right? So
How
for-
do you quantify goodness?
So I would quantify goodness as the state of human being, of being happy, of having more choices.
Good.
And we can see, and we
What
can
makes
see
you
this.
happy is different from what makes me happy.
I understand.
And it's different
but
from what makes an
so
Eskimo
your
happy,
ability-
and it's different from what makes a white South African happy.
I understand, but your ability to express that is the difference between people. So, for example, for me,
So
living
what?
in a first world country, I have far more options to express myself
Yes.
in different ways as opposed to someone in Africa.
Yes.
So I can say that I am in a better state than they are because I have more choice.
Better.
I can
Better.
quantify
That is
it.
cultural elitism for you to sit back and say, my ability to express myself because I live in the West is better than your ability living in South America.
No,
that's ridiculous
not what I'm
elitism.
saying. So, for example, you're saying it's cultural elitism, right?
Yes.
However, if we gave them the resources, they would be able to choose it. So if they so choose to still live in a village like that, then yes, that is their prerogative,
Yeah.
and they're in a better state.
Right.
However, for me, I define it in a certain way. That's
Fine.
my relative way of doing it.
But you better
However,
not say yours is better.
no.
You better just say
For
mine,
me,
I
can
choose
de-
what I choose.
But hold up, the way I can define this is through social science. So for example, they don't have the resources right now to have that sort of life. They don't have the resources to live a life sort of like mine. I can say definitively, with regards to the money they make, that I make more money, or I am worth more money. I can definitively say that if you give
You
society,
have more money. You're not more valuable than a poor person just because they don't have as much money as you.
and I never mentioned that.
Oh, you live in a
intrinsic
culture that
human
sure
value. I
leans that
mentioned
way.
monetary value. No, because you're deriding the culture itself. However, the culture itself is not saying that. So, for example, let's talk
You
about.
don't think any parts of the United States teach very clearly that your worth is dependent on your stock portfolio size?
Sir, with regards to monetary value, yes. But
Yeah.
I find it very hard for people to say that one human is better than another human being solely based on the fact that they exist. And so, for example, let's take for example the Christian idea of homosexuality, right? So you believe that you should be loving and accepting. However, the Old Testament explicitly states that you're supposed to stone gays. Am I incorrect?
You are incorrect in your assumption that freedom, love, and tolerance are real if there is no God. And your whole argument about homosexuality is based on an emphasis on freedom, love, and tolerance. Fine, sir, but the basis of your argument there
Actually,
is
my
based
argument
on
isn't
God.
based on emotion at
That
all.
God has given us an ability to be free, that God has given us an ability to love, and that tolerance is a good virtue. And that is based on a theistic worldview.
It's not about freedom, love, and tolerance. It's
Oh,
about,
that your whole argument is based on
No,
your view
let's-
of freedom, love, and tolerance.
No, let's take,
and
for
the reason
example-
you're pointing out that the Old Testament is wrong is because it is thwarting freedom, love, and tolerance. And my point to you is if you'll read the Bible clearly, you will understand the Bible is giving you the basis of freedom, love, and tolerance.
Sir, that's
It is not
strawmanning.
blasting that apart.
No, because assuming that I'm basing it on this sole idea of freedom, tolerance, and love
Yes.
is incorrect.
No, it's not.
It's about
It's
social
what you
science.
said.
It's about social science, right?
You were
For
appealing
example,
to justice when you tried to say to me, how can you say that the Bible
No.
affirms value of a person
No,
when
no,
it says
that's-
stone a
that's
homosexual?
not what I- that's
So
not what
the
I'm
whole
arguing.
context
You're
of
not
your
letting me
question
finish.
is freedom, the value of a human being, rights, love, and tolerance are important. I agree with you, they are important.
No.
But the whole basis for them being important
me.
is they are gifts of God.
No, so for
Yes,
example,
that's
you didn't let
correct.
me finish. So for in the Old Testament,
Yes.
with regards to that time era,
Yes.
it would have somewhat made sense for people to say stone the gays, with the context that in a society that was highly mobile and warlike, they would have needed a lot more children and a larger populace to fight. in that context, they could manufacture whatever reason it was for it, right? So in order to control society, you would always call it divine emperor. Yes, because you can see it in history.
No, you go back to Genesis 2, that's the context, a good creation. And in Genesis 2 you read that God created our sexuality to be enjoyed between a man and a woman till death parts us. That's what they were referring to in the Old Testament.
Aside from calling to God, many societies use divinity as their reason for being. So in China, they called to a mandate of heaven to mandate that all societies have to follow the emperor. In Islam, they had a caliphate, and the caliph was the one who called from Muhammad or whoever to do whatever.
Right.
Religion, in the context of Christianity, all the rules they set were mostly practical in the Old Testament as well as the New Testament, right? So Jesus said,
no, false.
Why not? So, for example,
the basis of morality in the New and Old Testament is not practicality.
No, in the Bible,
it is not pragmatism. No, sir, it is not.
Right, it's written in the Bible, right? It's made out to be given from God, right? Like, for example, the 10 Commandments.
Which is different from pragmatism, sir.
No, but my
theism is different from pragmatism. No. Basic fundamental point.
Right. From what I'm saying is that despite that, you can see that they're pragmatic for the time that they were in.
Yes, I can see how not murdering this man is pragmatically wise. The basis of do not murder is not pragmatism. The basis of do not murder is he is a human being created in the image of God. And if I denigrate him by murdering him, that is absolute evil.
I would argue that it's a different way. By not murdering him, you allow a human being to go out and be productive in the world, to create both value and help other people.
You are a great Western capitalist. Bravo. I'm standing here saying Western capitalism is not the basis for his value. I'm insisting he's a human being created in the image of God. He has innate value that has nothing to do with the size of his bank account or his stock portfolio or his career potential. He's a human being created for a purpose, to love and worship God and to love and serve others. Part of the way he does that is by working and producing, which is good. But when he works and produces, the value when he comes home at night is not the size of his paycheck. The value when he comes home at night is he's a human being created in the image of God. If you're an atheist and there is no God, then you cannot say there's a moral absolute. Instead, you can say there are ethics that I create, there are ethics that cultures create.
Why couldn't you say that?
Because if there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human mind that defines what's right and wrong.
Why would that be the case?
Sorry.
If there is no God, there is no mind prior to the human mind.
The only reason why we have any morals is because we can speak. The only reason why you have a thought in your head is because you can speak.
It's not true.
Separating you from an animal is the fact that you can speak.
But if you're the one defining that, and I say, no, it's good to kill someone, who's right and why?
Me, because I'm just telling you you're wrong.
That's the arrogance.
Why is that arrogant?
I'm not saying he's arrogant, but the thought there is arrogant.
Why is that arrogant?
If I say there is no God,
so it makes
and
you
morality is relative, but that I say to murder him is wrong, and I'm right, and if you murder him, you're wrong, that's total arrogance. Colonial arrogance, personal arrogance,
arrogant
whatever.
For you to say it's okay to murder him? I don't understand what you're arguing.
That I'm right, I'm better, I'm superior, and your opinion's inferior.
To think that not killing somebody,
he's
that
already
would be
insulting.
arrogant of me to think that because I don't believe that God sent me that message.
No. Here's the arrogance. The arrogance is morality is relative. The individual or the culture defines it. Guess what? I am right, you are wrong. My culture is right, your culture is wrong. That's the arrogance.
No.
That's the arrogance.
Hold up. Okay, can I define my viewpoint?
Yes, define your viewpoint.
So if everybody has their own views on life, their own truths on life, and they continue to lead their lives through that, I believe everybody has the free will to choose their own path in life. So how is that me projecting my values onto other people? Because I'm not telling them.
I didn't say that. But if you do that,
how is that arrogant?
If you do that, and then you tell me that my murdering him is wrong.
I'm saying that he can do whatever he wants to do.
Okay, and my whole point is you can't live that out. I am convinced that if I do murder him, you're not going to look me in the face and say, well, Cliffe, I understand that your culture teaches you that murdering him is right. So it's okay, let's go ahead and murder him. I think you're going to live your life as if for me to murder him is really wrong. Now, if I'm wrong, tell me. Am I wrong? Or if I murder him, what are you going to tell me?
You literally have the free will to go and kill him.
Is it right if I murder him?
But you'll stop it because you will support a state that would imprison him for doing that.
Sure, but that's my prerogative, you know? Like I
the
can't.
only thing stopping him from killing you is God.
But it's your prerogative because you think it's a moral, justification
but
to
that's
put him
not
in
my.
All right, Stuart, get in here. What do you
Not
think?
some sort of arrogance or like whatever you like saying that.
Well, you're still imposing. You're imposing prison on him.
I think what he's trying to articulate is like y'all aren't really like hearing him. Is that you're saying that he's arrogant for doing his own thing? He's living his life.
I didn't say that.
That's literally
I
what
did
you
not.
said so many
I
times.
said when he tells me, as a moral relativist, that whatever I do is wrong, wrong, really wrong, that's the arrogance. It's not arrogant for him to have his own opinion.
Sure, okay, I'll
when he tells me that what I'm doing is wrong, that's when he's an arrogant twit.
That was a very heated debate, but Cliffe made some really good points there. If you want more of such content, please subscribe to this channel and leave a comment about what you think.